Fun Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of jest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor pulls the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steam Fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hi there, I'm Machine Pun Kelly, and welcome to the Pun Show. And have a happy Friday and have a happy weekend. Today I'm going to primarily focus on the jobs report and what it tells us about what's happening with the economy and what that means for the future. And I'm just going to, spoiler alert, we're fornicated. It's nowhere near as good as it sounds, and I'll peel open the top layer and kind of poke around and show you why it's very, very bad news what's in the job report. Even though there's 119,000 jobs allegedly added, there's a lot wrong with that, and it's the kind of jobs that were added that are really concerning to me. And again, I'm not an economist, and I don't play one on TV, but I know how to read. So, okay. We're going to talk about a few other things first before we dive into that. The first thing I just want to mention, the Clintons have been subpoenaed, and it's going to be behind closed doors. And honestly, I have no issue with that. You know, Clinton is named in the Epstein files. Not quite sure why Hillary Clinton has been subpoenaed. I don't like her name isn't in the Epstein files. It seems more partisan than it is logistical. And I would have I'd be a lot more comfortable with it if Trump were also being subpoenaed. But when you're subpoenaing Clinton, who just, as far as I know, and the only evidence that we have is he flew on the plane. There's no flight records that show he went to Epstein Island. Mostly I think he went to like Africa and stuff and you know, like used the plane to get to different functions for the Clinton Foundation, which of course, you know, you say Clinton Foundation, and MAGA has this kind of diluted notion that there was something fraudulent about that. But anyway, subpoena him, ask him what he knows. I don't care. But if you're only subpoenaing him and you're ignoring all the evidence against Trump, which his name is in it a lot more than Clinton's. It's not like, oh, well, it mentions both of them. No, it mentions Trump a lot more. The Epstein emails, for instance, over half of them had Trump's name in it. His name was mentioned more than anybody else's. Both Trump and Epstein claimed they were best friends for 10 years. So it's not like we can just brush off the Trump allegations by a simple denial. If you're going to investigate Clinton, investigate Trump. There's no reason you can't investigate Trump. And this is why I don't like this oversight committee is just extremely partisan. And that they're doing it behind closed doors and whatnot, it all has a bad taste to it. Okay, now we're just going to go into Lindsey Graham's little hysterical fit.
Really outraged that my private cell phone and my official phone were subpoenaed without cause, that a judge would suggest that I would destroy evidence or tamper with witnesses if I were told about what was going on. And I'm sure the other senators, Haggerty, Hawley, Sullivan, Tuberville, Johnson, Scott, Loomis, Blackburn, Ted Cruz, at least one staff member, the Speaker of the House, now we know, Kevin McCarthy. They asked for his phone records the day he was sworn in as Speaker, and AT&T apparently gave them to him. What's going on here? What did we do? This is why we need to...
Okay, so what's going on here? What did we do? Well, we know what you did. And first of all, they didn't subpoena your phone records. They subpoenaed the metadata from your phones to see who you were and who you talked to, because they were trying to track what happened. And there was an actual crime committed here, like lots and lots of crimes. There was an actual attempt to overthrow the government. And you're the one who went to Georgia and demanded that they overturn the election results there. You want to say you're outraged that you were investigated? I'm outraged that you weren't prosecuted. You should be in jail right now, Lindsey. You can be outraged all you want, but you shouldn't be out of jail. You tried to overthrow the government. You told 71 million Americans that their votes didn't count. So yeah, be outraged, but you should be in prison. Really tired of this whole dumbing down of January 6th and the attempt by Donald Trump and Republicans to overturn the election results. If the Democrats even thought of trying crap like all that, they were outraged just by that the Democrats were accused of trying to rig the election without any evidence at all. They were ready to throw Democrats in jail just on accusations. But when there are verified facts, when there's an actual recording of you telling Georgia to overturn the votes, the results of the election, Lindsey, then it's like all of a sudden, I'm so triggered and offended. I'm triggered and offended that you're not in jail, Lindsey. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. Next thing I want to do is talk about this thing that happened where we got, hey, it's Resistance Kitty. How are you doing this afternoon, Resistance? Arcade. I think that's what I'll call you, Arcade. Anyway, the legality of the killings. So there's these the Democrats, some of the Democrats who have, like a history of service and intelligence or the military, published an advertisement reminding members of the military that it's unlawful to obey an unlawful order. And yesterday I mentioned that the case history of this goes back to My Lai in Vietnam, where like hundreds of women and children and elderly men were raped and murdered, even though they didn't know anything, even though they weren't combatants. They said they did this on orders. And they were told, no, this is not a lawful order. Therefore, you can be prosecuted for doing it. And they got prosecuted. And then, President Nixon pardoned one of, the leader of it. And so that's disgusting and deplorable. And just another example of how the Republican Party is not just new to this kind of disgusting, revolting behavior. But anyway, the military did its job and prosecuted them. And so now the Republicans, of course, if you watch the video, it says they're again and again and again saying it is illegal to obey an unlawful order. You don't have to obey an unlawful order. They always say unlawful order. So of course you've got Blondie McLiarface that is sitting there going, oh, they said that you can't obey a lawful order. They're telling the military to disobey lawful orders. No, they clearly said unlawful over and over again. They said the opposite of what you are accusing them of saying. Barbie McLies a lot. So let's get into this. What is the unlawful order that the Trump apologists are so apoplectic about the military disobeying? And it seems to be an indication of the fact that they're carrying out extrajudicial killings on the high seas, right out in the Caribbean. They're just bombing boats that they're calling drug smuggling boats. Okay. Now, yesterday I went through and proved statistically that there's a 99.57% chance that at least some innocent people have been executed. But in a way, that's moot. It's moot whether they're guilty or innocent. Because even if they're guilty, the extrajudicial killings are illegal. So the next thing I want to do is go through and look at the legal analysis of what these killings are. And just for the sake of argument, let's just, even if these killings were drug smugglers, and I'm not conceding they were, I don't think they were. I think it's impossible that all of them were. I think it's plausible some of them were. But let's just take the assumption they're guilty. If they're guilty, does that make these killings legal? Virtually any lawyer outside of the Trump administration is not only going to tell you they aren't, they're going to laugh at the question. So I'm going to go through why that is real quick. Okay. So they've killed somewhere between 76 and 83 people, 21, I think it is, vessels that have been destroyed. They have not confirmed anybody's identities, and they haven't had any congressional authorization, which is really important when you consider what the legal justification that Trump is giving is. Okay, so on September 2nd, the Trump administration conducted military strikes on boats in the Caribbean and Pacific Ocean, killing 76 to 83 people. Starting or since September 2nd. Okay. We're killing 76 to 83 people. It is claiming we're drug traffickers. The administration calls them narco-terrorists and insists the strikes are lawful. However, legal experts, human rights organizations, the United Nations, and former government lawyers say these are unlawful extrajudicial killings. And another word for extrajudicial killings, just in case you're wondering, is murder. Can the U.S. military legally kill people in boats in international waters without due process, trial, or proof of imminent threat, simply by labeling them terrorists? So I want to real quick mention what narco-terrorists has meant historically and what Trump is saying it means. Narco-terrorist was a term that was coined by Reagan when in Central America, people were funding terrorist activities with narcotics trafficking. So their goal, the goal of the organization, was political in nature. The other way it can be used is when narcotics gangs bomb government representatives or government entities in order to maintain a government that is more friendly to narcotics trafficking. Okay, those are the two primary ways it's been used historically, and neither of those applies here. They don't even know who the smugglers were, much less can they prove that they had some kind of political motive to smuggling in drugs. So what the Trump administration is saying, they're going to smuggle in these drugs, and these drugs are an imminent threat to Americans because Americans OD on drugs. And there's a lot wrong with that. And I'm going to go through it and explain this. First of all, the core legal problems. There's no armed conflicts exist. Drug trafficking is not warfare. It may be eventually a threat that somebody could die, but it's not a direct action, and it has to be a direct action, like a bomb or something. There has to be like an actual physical threat. There's no imminent threat proven. No evidence people on boats posed immediate danger requiring lethal force. If they had gone and pulled over the boats with the Coast Guard and boarded the boats like they have always historically done, then that would have, they could have just arrested them there, confiscated the cocaine, got them to flip, do whatever they do when they normally prosecute people. There was no threat that prevented them from being able to do that. The victims are civilians. Even suspected criminals cannot be targeted without due process. That's the whole point of due process. We have due process. You don't just get due process if you're innocent. Imagine if Joe Biden had just said, Donald Trump is guilty, therefore I'm going to kill him or whatever. Like, there's a reason we have trials. There's a reason we have, rules and there's a reason that we have due process. It's because you have a right to defend yourself. These people had no right to defend themselves. The administration, there's no identification. The administration doesn't even know who it's killing. And there's no congressional authorization. I'll get into this in a bit, but Congress has not authorized military force against any drug cartels, and they need to do that. That's the way our Constitution is written. So what the administration is saying is that before September, the administration secretly declares non-international armed conflict with drug cartels. Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel produces classified opinion promising immunity for military personnel who conduct strikes. Why are you giving them immunity if you're giving them lawful orders? Doesn't that prove by itself that the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel knew they were giving these military personnel immunity or giving them unlawful orders? Why did they need to give them immunity if the orders are lawful? I was in the military for 4.5 years. Never once was told I would get immunity for doing my job. The first strike, the U.S. military attacked a boat in the Caribbean, killing 11 people. Trump posted videos of explosion on Truth Social because he has to brag about his crime. He's got, look, we killed those brown people. Aren't we awesome? Claimed victims were trendy Aragua members with massive amounts of drugs, neither of which has ever been proven. And again, they don't even know who these people were. So how do they know that they were Trendy Aragua members? And again, Trendy Aragua isn't a terrorist organization, even if you declared them one. So Human Rights Watch has immediately condemned the strike and unlawful extrajudicial killing. UN experts began raising concerns. So on September 15th, a couple of weeks later, second strike, and U.S. strike another boat, killing 3. Trump posts, "Be warned, if you are transporting drugs that can kill Americans, we are hunting you." Still, no evidence that they were transporting drugs, no evidence that that boat was even coming to America, but he did hunt them. He did kill them. So U.S. Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Executions formally condemns as extrajudicial executions. So according to international law, and the person in charge of evaluating international law said these were illegal. The UN has said these are illegal killings. Several human rights organizations have said these are illegal killings. According to the Constitution, these are illegal killings. Strikes continue with at least 20 vessels destroyed. So since then, we're up to 21. Death toll reaches 76 to 83. Administration reveals operation name Operation Southern Spear. So on October 30th or 31st, congressional briefings reveals administration doesn't know identities of victims and cannot meet evidentiary burden to prosecute survivors. So they have enough evidence to kill the survivors or to kill them, but they don't have enough evidence to prosecute them if they survived. Again, how is that even okay with you if you're a MAGA? Right? They can't prosecute the survivors, but they can kill them. They are admitting they don't have evidence right there. So the Senate votes down a resolution to seek strikes. I have no idea why they did that, other than that they are just totally in bed with Trump. But them not authorizing the sea strikes is not the same thing as authorizing strikes. There hasn't been a congressional authorization to authorize these strikes. There has not been a declaration of war. This is an unconstitutional act. And this is Republicans in Congress bowing to King Trump. And this is just national. There's also the international aspect of it. It's not just, he's not killing people in America or in American waters. He's killing people in international waters. So we have to be subject to international law. So the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights called for an investigation on November 10th and warns of strong indications of extrajudicial killings and find no justification in international law. So then just a few days ago, or less than a week ago, Congress finally allowed to read the classified OLC memo, Insecure Room, only 20 copies, which claims the strikes target drugs, not people, a novel legal theory. Oh, we're just bombing drugs. Again, where are the drugs then? Where's the proof there's drugs? You're bombing people that are supposedly carrying these drugs. This is not a legal argument. If you were to suspect drug smuggling in a van, and so you were to authorize a drone strike on that van on public streets, and you were to say, we weren't trying to kill the driver, we were just trying to destroy the drugs, that would be illegal. Saying you're going after the drugs and not the people doesn't matter if you're killing the people in the process. Then yesterday, Trump said that these Democrats who were rightfully saying that you can't follow an unlawful order were committing treason or committing sedition. Donald Trump, who tried to overthrow the government, literally tried to overthrow the government by overturning the results of a legitimate and legal and authorized election. That is sedition. Telling military members to follow the law is not sedition. It's not even illegal. And I'm kind of tired of some of the people that are coming on my TV and saying, well, they went too far, sure, but Trump is really bad. No, they didn't go too far, because you have military people that are carrying out extrajudicial killings. So somebody needs to be reminded that what they're doing is against the law. So let's go into, first, I'm going to give an honest representation of what Trump's legal justification is. So nobody can say, oh, well, you're not presenting both sides. I am. I'm presenting his side. He has his claim for an armed conflict is that U.S. is in a non-international armed conflict with designated terrorist organizations, drug cartels. The laws of war apply since we're in this war with the drug cartel under international humanitarian law. These are legitimate military targets. Basically, he's saying we're at war with the drug cartels. These are members of the drug cartel. Therefore, it's legal to kill them. These are enemy combatants. In self-defense, acting under Article 2, constitutional authority, an inherent right of self-defense. They're just defending themselves from this. They're defending Americans from this cocaine invasion. That's what The terrorist designation, groups like Tender de Aragua, are designated foreign terrorist organizations. But to be clear, they're designated by the Trump administration. Like, you could just say anybody is a terrorist organization by that logic, then declare war on that terrorist organization, then legally kill them. The next president could say MAGA is a terrorist organization, and then just start killing people. That's the legal equivalent. You can't just do that. You can't just say people are terrorist organizations with no evidence that they're terrorist organizations. And terrorist organization, that has a meaning. It means they are politically motivated. They're violent, and their violence is with political, with an aim for a political end. You can't say that about any of them. So the novel theory is that the strikes target the drugs, contraband, not the people. Therefore, targeting is lawful, except that they're killing people. So the Justice Department says the strikes were ordered consistent with the laws in armed conflict, and such are lawful orders. Military personnel are legally obligated to follow lawful orders, and as such are not subject to prosecution for lawful orders. Then why are you giving them immunity? If this is the case, why are you giving them immunity? I mean, I think that's a fair question, right? Why would you give somebody immunity for following a lawful order? What will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. That's Mark Rubio. The only thing that can stop them is blowing them up. Have drugs come over the border since you started blowing up these boats? Okay, so this is what the legal experts are saying. The legal experts almost, like, I looked, there basically aren't anybody outside of the Trump administration or his little allies on Fox News or whatever, like no legitimate legal, there's been no legitimate legal argument in favor of him from someone that is objective and outside of the Trump administration. So, first of all, they're saying there is no armed conflict. Drug trafficking is not warfare. A non-international armed conflict requires specific factual conditions that just don't exist here. Because of that, these are civilians, not combatants. Military cannot deliberately target civilians, even suspected criminals, who don't pose an imminent threat of violence. And there is no threat of violence. Cocaine is not a violent threat. It's not an imminent violent threat. No matter if you say, well, people overdose. First of all, it's like the whole overdosing thing is, it's an issue, but it's much more complicated than blowing up boats. If the argument were, if we bomb these boats, it will stop overdose deaths, I'd entertain it more. It would still be illegal. I would say you should do it through legal means, but it's not even realistic. It's not even a fantasy. There's not even one scintilla of evidence that shows these boat bombings have stopped one death. Most of those boats weren't even bound for the United States. So human right law applies outside of an actual armed conflict. Law enforcement rules apply. Lethal force only when strictly unavoidable to protect against imminent threat of death or serious injury. Was there an imminent threat of death or serious injury? No, there was not. Again, if the Coast Guard had just pulled over the boat instead of blowing it up, would anybody have been injured or died? No. What are you going to do? Throw the cocaine halfway across the ocean, hit somebody in the face, they're going to snort themselves to death? What is the immediate threat? Self-defense doesn't apply. Drug smuggling is not an armed attack that justifies military defense under international law. There is no due process. And the administration admits it doesn't even know the victim's identity and can't prove cases to prosecute survivors. So not only is there no due process, if they had tried to prosecute them, they wouldn't even know who to prosecute. And finally, there's no congressional authorization. This is what I was referring to when I said the Senate not seizing them is not the same thing as Congress not authorizing them. There has to be an actual declaration of war. Your little double secret probation war doesn't really get congressional approval. The Congress has to authorize it. That's the Constitution. The problem calling with DOD calling cartels unprivileged belligerents is that the U.S. is not actually in a non-international conflict. A legal term of art that, to be applicable, requires specific facts that just aren't the current reality and cannot lawfully use lethal force as a first resort. Notwithstanding the fictional narrative being pushed by the White House, the U.S. is not in a war with these groups, and the people the DOJ is targeting are civilians who should be afforded due process. That's Sarah Harrison, former Pentagon Associate General Counsel, International Affairs. I think she's probably got some clue what she's talking about. Sarah Yeager, Washington Director of Human Rights Watch. U.S. officials cannot summarily kill people because they accuse of smuggling drugs. The problem of narcotics entering the United States is not armed conflict. And the U.S. officials cannot circumvent their human rights obligations by pretending otherwise. And there's this kind of false dichotomy that the MAGAs and the Trump administration wants to push, that you're either for drugs or you're for killing these alleged smugglers. No, I'm for prosecuting alleged smugglers. I'm just not for murder. The administration's inability to identify the people it is killing is certainly undermines the labeling of these individuals as narco-terrorists. Brian Finance, former Finucane, I don't know how to say his name, former separate State Department lawyer, counterterrorism specialist. So that's their legal argument. The UN now, we'll talk about what the UN has had to say, because the UN is, kind of the ones that are responsible for deciding what international law constitutes. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Watch called for U.S. investigation of the strikes, warned of strong indications that these are extrajudicial killings. Stated killings find no justification in international law and the U.S. Are these violations of international human rights law? Are they extrajudicial killings? I mean, there are strong indications that they are. Then the U.S. Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Executions, in a joint statement with two other human rights experts, formally condemned strikes as extrajudicial executions. So the UN has formally condemned the United States for murdering people on the high seas. That's not an opinion, that's fact. Extrajudicial executions are by definition illegal under international human rights law. Okay. What we know and don't know, they don't know who they're killing. They can't prosecute the survivors. There's no verification of any threat. And there's no attempt at non-lethal alternatives. Again, if you just board the boat, get the drugs, arrest the people, why is that not a workable solution? Just why not? So they're very long on rhetoric when it comes to bombing people, but they have no answers when it comes to like who those people are or what threat they posed. So the issues with the U.S. Constitution, is article, first of all, Congress has the sole power to declare war. You can't just do your little double secret classified memo and declare war. Fifth Amendment guarantees no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness without due process of law. The Supreme Court has heard over and over again that due process does not just apply to citizens. War powers resolution requires congressional authorization for military action within 60 days. So this allegedly this double secret classified memo was way more than 60 days ago. So where is the military? Where is the authorization? So it's a violation of the War Powers Act. And Congress has just not authorized it. So one, it's against U.S. law, and it's unconstitutional. According to international law, U.S. has ratified international covenant on civil and political rights, which protects right to life. Lethal force only when strictly unavoidable to protect against imminent threat. So the first one is just there to say the U.S. has agreed to follow international law. They ratified the covenant. So they are obligated to follow it by international law. Law enforcement standards, lethal force only when strictly unavoidable to protect against imminent threat. Not armed conflict. International humanitarian law doesn't apply. U.S. is not at war with Venezuela or cartels. So again, like their exception, these are okay because we're at war. We are not at war just because you said we're at war in your double secret, super classified memo. Extrajudicial killings. Killing without due process violates customary international law. And again, we can just call it murder. So then congressional response, the cowardly little Senate rejected resolution to stop the strikes. And the coward that's the ranking member of the House Foreign Committee. This is not the coward. This is the ranking member of the House Foreign Services Committee that said, I continue to believe these strikes are illegal and the enormous overreach of executive power, despite running for office on the promise of ending forever wars. The Trump administration is recklessly provoking a war that Congress is not authorized and the American people do not want, without thought for what comes next. Okay. All right. So I'm going to just go ahead and stop this part here because it's going kind of long. Okay. Wow. I've got a lot of comments. Okay. Immunity he grants will hold as much weight as the poop in my box in the international court. Yeah. The immunity won't apply to international law. The tattoo. Remember the tattoo? Oh yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna skip ahead. I remember. Yeah. Remember when torture was bad? Retroactive. I don't know what retroactive prosecution you're talking about. Are you thinking that I don't even know what that means. Isn't all prosecution like after the crime? I don't know what retroactive prosecution is supposed to mean. Who the fornication dies of a coke overdose? I have no idea, but apparently, see, this is one of the other things is they're trying to say that they had fentanyl on these boats, but no, fentanyl originates from that area. It comes from China, goes to Mexico, and then it gets smuggled over the U.S. border by U.S. citizens predominantly. Okay, the Coast Guard has done the Coast Guard has done anything the last 20 years to quell the flow. Okay, I think he means to say the Coast Guard has not done anything the last 20 years to quell the flow. I don't think you have any like actual, place to say that. Yes, they have. Um, fired up Jude down. Fired up Jude down for what? I don't know, something anti-Semitic. Why are you idiots running defense for drug cartels? Yes. Like, again, I'm all for, arresting and prosecuting drug smugglers, just not for murdering innocent fishermen. And without due process, you're doing the latter. If you can prosecute them, why aren't you prosecuting the survivors? If you can't prosecute them, how can you justify killing them? It's really that simple. So why are you running defense for murder? I bet you identify as pro-life too. Okay. So, definitely went over long on that, but I'm not too disappointed in myself. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is the jobs report and jobs and all of that. I found the jobs report was really interesting and some of the things that Trump has been saying. And I first want to start off with this notion that he has created like 2.5 million jobs or whatever. Okay. So I want to clear up what that means. What is actually, what is the word I'm looking for here? What is he mutating to make that out to be? All right. So what happened is in January there was a census adjustment of like 3.5 million, I think. That where they just realize, the census does these adjustments all the time. And they argued that there were more immigrants that came in than we had previously thought. And so they added 3.5 million to the census. And because many of those people had jobs, it added millions of jobs to our understanding of how many jobs there were, right? It is not like Bob was working, like Bob was working in December and Bob was working in January, but Bob's job was counted in December. Bob's job was not counted in January. Do you follow me? Like they just added the number to the census. They didn't add jobs to the economy. And Trump is trying to make it seem like they're doing the latter rather than the former. And not only that, and this is why I'm referring to this as Schrodinger's immigrant, because they make a big deal about all these immigrants that are coming over, but when the census makes this argument, then confirms that there are these people over, then all of a sudden all of these jobs are not people that were immigrants, they were American jobs. So like they were both immigrants taking our jobs and Americans getting new jobs at the same time. So it all depends on which question you asked and whether it makes Trump look good or bad and whether it makes Biden look good or bad. So let's talk about this. Trump administration employment for native-born Americans has gone up by 2.4 million since January, accounting for all net job gains. DHS 2.5 million American workers joined the workforce since Trump took office, while under Biden, 88% of jobs went to foreign-born workers, which is just a completely bogus number. Both of these numbers are statistically bogus. Okay, so they claimed the 2.4 million job gain due to population adjustment. So more than half of that is what they call a statistical artifact. It's just because in reality, Some of those jobs did go to Americans, or were Americans. I think it was 43% were foreign-born people, which is not the same thing as immigrants, and 57% were American. And the confidence interval, which is like the margin of error, it's like plus or minus 720,000. And so then they're also saying that the correlates with 2.2 million foreign-born people not having jobs. And again, foreign-born and illegal immigrant are not the same thing, because foreign-born includes people that were here legally, working here legally, had green cards, all of that kind of stuff. But the number itself is made up too. Like 2.2 million people, foreign-born people, did not lose their jobs. It's just trying to have it both ways at the same time. In January 2025, the current population had a massive population adjustment that added 3.5 million people overall and increased employed people by 2 million. The White House is comparing post-adjustment numbers to pre-adjustment numbers. That's not an apples to apples comparison. So this is what happened. This was the adjustment right here, right? And so you see there's a slight decline, a big bump. That was when the census made the adjustment. All right. Now, when the jobs report came out, this is what I found really interesting. Where are these jobs being added? Because there is something about this foreign-born employment going down that I think is actually far, far more troubling than we think. Like, whether the jobs are foreign-born or not, they're still jobs, and that means they're still adding to the economy. That means, like if foreign-born people come here and they have jobs, they're doing things. And those doing things contribute to the economy. They make money and they spend it. That means that they're going to stores and they're helping those stores by spending money. They are working. They're like, whether they're building houses or writing code, they're doing something constructive that adds to the economy. All of this contributes to the economy, whether they're legal or not. But in the jobs report, all of the jobs were in two primary areas: healthcare and leisure and hospitality. That includes like restaurants and drinking establishments and stuff like that. The healthcare was mostly low-level entry stuff, like medical technicians and entry-level healthcare workers. These aren't like doctors and nurses, is what I'm saying. These are the jobs that undocumented workers were taking. Do you follow me? So these new jobs are actually the low-hanging fruit. They're ones where they're not high-paying, and the jobs that the people that are filling these are leaving were higher paying. So these people are actually taking pay cuts and taking jobs that immigrants, undocumented immigrants, are fleeing from, just so they can have work. And so what experts are actually saying about all this, the Census Bureau routinely cautions against using CPS to estimate the foreign-born population. BLS discourages users from comparing data across years due to methodology changes. The CPS shows foreign-born population dropped from by 2.2 million from January to July, but leading research estimates a full year 2025 net immigration could range from 115 to 525,000. So the number of immigrants that have been lost is being overblown. Although I don't know what's going to happen with the mass deportations and how all that is going to work out, which is why it's really a shame that we're not going to know what is actually going on for like a year or two, because Trump wouldn't allow for us to continue monitoring things in October during the shutdown. So the reported 3 million increase in native-born adult population in 6 months is statistically impossible. So we couldn't just add 3 million in a month. This is you're just like, typically we have about 500,000 births a year. You're talking about suddenly out of nowhere, the birth rate increases by 600%. The real economic impact is you get underemployment. And that means people are taking jobs that they're overqualified for just to have jobs. And this is not, I always will mention, when this is not a problem that started under Trump, but it is a problem that has been exacerbated under Trump. Underemployment has been going back for years. Like right now, if you graduate from college, you've got a 41% chance of getting a job in your degree. Or I'm sorry, 41% chance that you won't find a job in your degree. Underemployment rate for recent college grads is 41%. If we were to continue with the mass deportations, Penn Wharton analysis, high-skilled workers would suffer a $2,764 loss in annual wages if immigration crackdowns span 10 years. Most monthly U.S. jobs growth averaged just 29,000 from June to August, down from 400,000 during 21 to 23. So, and that's after the adjusted numbers, by the way. The 29,000 a month is really, really bad. And that's since the mass deportation started. So right now, what you're starting to feel with the economy is, first you had the tariff impact, but now you're starting to get the mass deportation impact. And the mass deportation is going to have a much more negative effect on the economy than tariffs. I feel like we've spent too much time talking about tariffs and not enough time talking about mass deportations. And tariffs are actually terrible. Like, they both start with tear. So, the confidence interval problem. So, basically, they're saying that they're confident that these, that foreign-born employment has gone down. They're like 100% sure of that, but it falls within the margin of error. So, it's just logically unsound. It's like if people show, like, I hate it when people say, oh, here, so and so is leading by 1 point in the poll, and then here he was leading by 2 points in the polls, so he's gone up 1 point, but the margin of error is within 3 points. So in actuality, that's within the margin of error. It's just you poll different people. It's statistically the same. And essentially what they're doing here is they're just using one extreme of the margin of error, or the confidence interval, and they're declaring that as a fact when it could just as easily be the other direction. All right. So that's my issue with the jobs report, is that, actually, that's my issue with Trump's whole declaration about the 2.5 million. Now I want to go into mass deportations. Okay. And this is where I'm saying the jobs report is really starting to show that we're starting to really get hit by these mass deportations. Oh, let me check real quick. I think, okay, there are some new. I have 7 degrees, including a PhD, and I am more broke than I was in college, a direct result of Trump. Yeah. Like I know so many people that are highly qualified that are just, it's like, and it's almost like you're so qualified, you have like you can't get a job because there aren't any good jobs available and nobody wants to hire you as a maid because they're afraid you're going to leave the minute that you get a good job. They'll take the houses from regular Americans who like this is just xenophobic blabbering. Why not just have more houses? They're not taking houses from regular Americans who need them. And it's also funny how people like this will sit there and they'll denigrate the unhoused. And they'll talk about California and all the unhoused people and show, and they'll call them dirty and filthy. But then when it comes to immigrants, then it's like, oh, yeah, unhoused people are all the immigrants' fault. It's what's happened to Canada. No, it's not. That's just something you made up or heard on Fox. Immigrants are not taking away all the homes in Canada. That's completely made up. Why do people have to? Why is every MAGA argument have to be something made up? Okay, so I want to go through now, and I'm going to talk about the jobs report and how it shows there is real concern in our economy and how mass deportations are really starting to hurt it. Okay, pay attention. I know this is like pretty statistic heavy, but it's valid. It's important. We need to understand you do not take 10 million jobs out of the economy without having a negative effect on the economy. For the first time in decades, the U.S. is experiencing negative net migration. The economic impacts are already visible. Labor shortages, rising prices, and it's like the labor shortages are in entry-level positions or low-paying positions like a valet, And so here's something I was thinking of as an illustration. Let's say you have Fred and Bob. Fred has a farm and he has a strawberry farm. And then Bob is a truck driver who delivers groceries for Fred's farm. Okay. And maybe a couple of other farms. He's making, like, say they're both making 70 grand a year off of their operations. Okay. But then Donald Trump comes along with his mass deportations, and 40% of Fred's workforce is undocumented workers because it costs $7,000 per worker to do it legally. And he's got 10 workers and he's making 70 grand. So if he does everything the legal way, he's not going to make any money. And then what's the point of that? But now 40% of his workforce isn't showing up. So Fred, his farm is gone. He goes bankrupt. All right. And then Bob, who was the truck driver for Fred, was making all of this money because Fred had a job or had a business, and Fred had a business that was supported by undocumented workers. So when you take away the undocumented workers, you're actually taking away job creators. And when Fred's farm closes, those 60% of American workers that he had also lose their jobs. It's not like a bunch of Americans are moving to California or wherever to, work their butts off picking strawberries. So you've got, like all the other farm workers lose their jobs. Fred loses his job. Bob loses his job. But there's job openings at the hotel for valets. So now Fred and Bob are both working as valets instead of their better paying jobs. Donald Trump would say he replaced those foreign-born jobs with American jobs, so that's a win for America. Even though all those other Americans lost their jobs, even though Fred and Bob both had to take massive pay cuts, to Trump, that's good news. California, which I think would be like one of the largest economies in the world if it were its own country, has had a 3.1% drop in its workforce since the raise started. You don't do that without affecting California's economy, and you don't destroy California's economy without destroying the American economy. Let's stop pretending like each state exists in a vacuum. You don't think that California losing 3.1% of its income or workers affects Texas? It does. But don't think Texas isn't also losing a bunch of its workforce. Agricultural jobs lost 155,000. There was 2.2% growth last year. So when you lose that much agricultural jobs, you're losing what they did for a living, right? You're losing, for instance, beef, which is one of the reasons why beef is so high. We've lost 0.1% of our construction construction employment. You wanted, like the clown that was talking about housing. You know what's going to destroy housing even more is reducing the number of houses built. The concern here is actually not that immigrants are occupying homes. The main thing that is driving it, there's two main things. One, entry-level homes are being bought up by investors that are then renting out the homes for super high prices. That's the number. So if you want an entry-level home, it's hard to buy one. It's not so true about, like with the more expensive homes, because if you can afford a more expensive home, you're not renting. But the entry-level homes are being priced out. People are going and paying like 20% over cost because they're still going to make money on it. We are projected to lose 6.8% of our GDP. This is according to Wharton. This is not according to Kelly. This is not according to Democrats. This is the very college that Trump brags about having attended. So we've had 67,000 ICE detentions, plus another 71,000 immigrants that have been deported. Some of those people who have been deported even entered here legally, and then were, after they entered, had their legal status taken away. So it's like, don't even give me this "they should have done it the right way" crap. Not if they do it the right way and then you just change your mind. And I've mentioned this several times in the last few days. There have been more brown citizens deported than people who are white and are undocumented migrants. We've spent about 300 okay, so the cost of these deportations is $350 billion. And I think that's not just the actual cost of deporting them. I think that's the downstream effect of their cost on the economy, like what they spend, what they buy. what they do, and what they pay in taxes. All of that factors in. So labor force is collapsing in key states. California, after weeks of migration, worksite rates in Southern California, the total workforce dropped 3.1% from May to June, with the number of non-citizens showing up to work dropping even more dramatically. And it's like people aren't, it's not just the people that you're deporting, it's the people that aren't showing up because they're afraid of being deported. The construction industry. The 10 states with the highest concentration of undocumented workers saw construction employment drop 0.1%, while other states saw a 1.9% increase. Because there is a push to build new homes, but you can't build those new homes with nobody to build them. The hospitality labor force growth slowed to 2.2% in June 2025 compared to 1.5% in July 2024. And these are now jobs that are not being filled, or that are being filled by people who used to make more money. We've lost 155,000 ag workers from March to July, just in a few months. That's important months too, right? That's like when you're sowing your crops. So you don't get crops without those. So this is 2024 versus 2025 in terms of job growth. In 2024, it was plus 2.2%. Now it's 0.1%, negative 0.1%. This is construction in other states, 1.9% to 1.9%. So there's no change. It's not, this shows it's 100% because of deportations. Where deportations aren't an issue, it stayed the same. Hospitality growth, 1.51% increase in 2024, and a negative 0.2% decrease in 2025. Agriculture, 2.2% increase in 2024, and a 3.8 decrease in 2025. And you can say, oh, well, that just means it's working. No, that means that the economy is going to suffer. That means if you go to a restaurant and there's nobody waiting on your table, the reason is nobody's there. You are going to suffer the impact. You're not going to, you know why food prices are going through the roof? Because there isn't any food. Because agriculture is dropping. So, like, there's just no ag workers, or not enough. And if you lose 60% or 40% of your workforce, you don't lose 40% of your profit. You lose 100% of your profit. And you go bankrupt. And so that means you lose 100% of your lettuce, 100% of the strawberries, 100% of whatever used to be raised there. The White House claims mass deportation means higher wages and more opportunity for American workers. In reality, wage growth has been largely flat for more than a year. It's up 0.2%. So let me explain what is happening. One, you've got these people moving from higher paid jobs to lower paid jobs. Even though you might have some people moving from no jobs into these low paying jobs, and the low paying jobs might be incrementally going up as a result, you have much more problem with people moving from high paid jobs to low paid jobs. So that's why the wage growth has been negligible. But because you're taking away workers from hospitality, you're taking away workers from construction, you're taking away workers from agriculture, you're seeing prices go up. So you have people making the same or less money on the one hand, and on the other hand, everything costs more. And the more you need it, the more it costs more. So Penn Wharton analysis found that most paychecks would shrink under mass deportations, and that's starting to happen. Only low-skilled authorized workers see a 5% wage bump, which reverses if deportations are reversed. High-skilled workers would be worse off because low-skilled immigrants complement their work. Overall economy gets smaller. Fewer bodies to produce means lower GDP. GDP also contains consumption. So that means that fewer people buying things, right? So if you have 10 million people, 10 million fewer people buying things, that means you're selling fewer of those things that they would buy, right? We're selling a lot less tortillas, for instance. The things that they buy, all of a sudden, you're not selling them. That means the people that make those things that they buy are losing their jobs. So there's actually studies that show for every million people who are deported, you lose 88,000 domestic jobs. Like people that are citizens are losing their jobs when you start taking away, when you start doing these mass deportations. So Penn Wharton concluded there is no question the U.S. economy will get smaller. As you deport a lot of the workforce, you simply have fewer bodies to produce. Fewer people means a smaller economy. So far we've deported 1.3 million, and we're going to get up to, he's going to try and do another 8.3. We are just starting to feel the negative impact. It's going to get a whole hell of a lot worse. Okay, so then impact number 3, labor shortages across critical industries. Mass deportations are, these are all kind of prophetic because a lot of this is coming from a Penn Wharton study. This is what is happening now. Mass deportations are removing workers from industries across Americans. Depend on daily construction, up to 1.5 million workers. 1/6 of the industry is undocumented. Agriculture, 225,000 workers. About 20% of the agricultural workforce, up to 50% on specialty farms. And what is the number at already? We're already at 150,000. So this is where it's actually probably going to be more than 225,000. 1 million workers from hotels, restaurants, and tourism, manufacturing, 870,000 workers. Do you think that the manufacturing is going to be helped? I don't. I think that manufacturing you're going to have factories go under. And when you take the meatpacking industry, like 40% of the workforce in the meatpacking industry is undocumented workers. So who's going to fill those jobs, and what happens if they don't? Look at the price of beef and ask yourself, why is the price of beef going up so much? Don't think it's not in part because of mass deportations. There are other things that contribute to it, all compounded by Donald Trump's stupid economy. Transportation and warehousing, 461,000 workers. Healthcare, home and home care, critical support of staff maintaining aging population care. So you notice, like right now, like I was pointing out, that the hospitality and healthcare industries are the only ones that are hiring. So right now, the first jobs that are being filled are the ones that people are the most willing to take, right? Like, okay, I'll go work for a hotel and I'll be a hotel maid because it's better than like not having a job. Well, what happens when all those hotel jobs are filled? Who's going to move to California to pick strawberries? Things are going to get worse. And if they are willing to move to California to pick strawberries, will there be any strawberry farms left? The housing crisis will get worse. U.S. has a shortage of 3.8 million homes. Construction has faced labor shortages since the mid-2000s, ever since, the housing bubble popped. So losing 1.5 million construction workers means longer delays in building homes, higher housing costs, no ready supply of U.S.-born workers to replace them. Again, you want to talk about home prices? Talk about how are we going to get new homes? There's a number of things that are impacting that. And I think that one thing MAGAs do is they will point to legitimate problems and then they will use illegitimate solutions to say, oh, see, that will solve it. We have a shortage of 3.8 million homes. I think undocumented workers only have like less than half of that. And they're not even owning them. Most of those are being rented, and they'll have multiple families living in one home. Mass deportations are not going to give us 3.8 million new homes. The solution is building new homes, but the restriction is right now there's a lot of red tape that we have to cut through. So we need to get rid of that red tape. We need to make it easier for families to buy starter homes. We need to pass regulations that keep people from buying up starter homes to rent them. There are solutions that we need to look at. And as long as we're spending all our money and energy addressing solutions that only make it worse, we cannot make it better. And I do like Kamala Harris, whether you voted for her or not, actually had some good resources or had some good solutions for this. The Democrats should dive back into some of those and look at it more, maybe flesh it out some more and start proposing bills. They need to run on solutions, not just on Trump being bad. Trump is bad. But we need to trump on the Democrats being better by offering better solutions. Not just negativity. Look at what happened in New York. He didn't win by just being negative. He won by offering solutions. Whether you agree with those solutions or not, you cannot disagree that he won because he offered some. So, impact number 4. Prices are going up because production is going down. And it's law of supply and demand, right? If you don't have anybody to harvest your strawberries, you have fewer strawberries. Demand for strawberries doesn't change, so what happens? The price of strawberries goes up. This shows deporting 3 million immigrants, prices rise by 1.5% by 2028. We're already at 1.3 million immigrants. And prices have gone up by more than 1.5% because it's stacked on top of terrorists. Deporting 8.3 million immigrants, prices go up by 9.1% by 2028. I feel like that number is conservative. You think inflation was bad under Biden? Just wait 3 more years. And the thing is, a couple of things. One, people are saying inflation hasn't been going up that fast under Trump. It was on its way down. So it's got inertia to break, right? He didn't just maintain the same thing. He countered downward momentum. And now it's going up. The latest CPI, I think it's 4.3% for groceries. Prices are really going up. Food prices are going up, and it's tariffs on top of this massive immigration. And it's going to go up a lot more. And it's going up while unemployment is going up. And it's going up while the economy is about to crash and be into a full-fledged recession. It's going to make the 80s look like like the 70s and early 80s look like a party. So this is a projection of prices by 2028 if we have the 8.3 million deported versus 1.3, and it could be more than 8.3 million. And it's not just the people that are deported too, it's the people that just stop showing up for work, because that has the same impact. So the impact number 5, U.S. born workers lose jobs too. The myth: deporting immigrants opens jobs for U.S. born workers. The reality: research on past deportations shows the opposite happens. Secure Communities study: mass deportation substantially harmed U.S. workers, county by county, reducing both their employment and wages. The worst harms were on the least educated and most vulnerable U.S. workers. If you've never looked at it, go and look at what happened to Alabama. Alabama got destroyed by mass deportations. And it wasn't like Alabama was already doing well. Why this happens? Business owners don't just hire natives to replace the deported workers. And a lot of times if they go under, they invest in less labor-reliant jobs. They invest less in new business formation. They shift capital to less labor-intensive technologies and industries because they know what's the point, right? They scale back production to reflect the loss of consumers. This is what I was saying. When you're deporting people, you're not just deporting workers, you're deporting customers. Disappearing migrant workers dry up local demand at grocery stores, apartments, and services. Both immigrants and U.S. born workers would suffer job losses, particularly in construction and childcare. So that's the other thing, is the price of childcare is going to go up. So this is, mass deportations are biting off your nose to spite, or cutting off your nose to spite your face. Okay, so I'm going to go into another screen here. I'm trying something new. I put together a PowerPoint, so we will see how this works. The compounding crisis, because I want to talk now about how this all adds up. There are a number of things: the mass deportations, the tariffs, the austerity cuts, the losing ACA. Each of those has its own negative effect on the economy. But when you start stacking them up, it gets worse. For instance, when you start cutting all of these, you're making your Medicaid cuts, right? To make it harder to get Medicaid while you're working. And you've got the ACA cuts, which are going to make it harder for people that make too much money for Medicaid to get Medicaid, and you're cutting the expansion. All right. So all that means is that there are going to be more people that are in what we call the gap. And the gap is people that make too much for Medicaid, but not enough to pay for private insurance. And these medical savings accounts plus high-risk insurance that's a non-starter. That has been tried before. It doesn't work because you don't have enough in your medical savings account to pay for your high deductible. So if something catastrophic happens, you end up in debt. And the sicker you are, the higher your premiums are going to go, even for your high deductible plans. So if you're like 30 and you're making 100K and your, cost of living, like you're in a rural town and your cost of living, you've got like $25,000, $30,000 in expendable income, and you can exhaust all your savings or, dump a bunch of money into your medical savings account, and you're not really worried about having to use that, and you get all that tax-free stuff, and you're like a really healthy person, you don't have any issues, then this might be a workable plan for you. But if you're sick, if you have genetic things that you don't even have any control over, if you had cancer before, all of those things, you're going to have to pay more for your health insurance. So what does that then, this increased gap, you've got the ACA on the one hand, you've got the lower Medicaid benefits on the other hand. How does that affect the economy, the growing gap? How does adding 20, 30, 40 million people to the uninsured rolls affect the economy? So it's not just, like looking at tariffs by itself or looking at immigration by itself, or, it's looking at everything together. So put together this PowerPoint and the compounding crisis, how multiple Trump policies create an economic perfect storm. Okay. Just mass deportations. 5.9 million jobs lost. GDP GDP impact. Sorry, I was GDP impact. It's going to cost $1 trillion in annual economic loss. Mass deportations, 1.4 million. Housing crisis deepens, and childcare 500K. This is just what mass deportations are going to cost. 1.4 million jobs lost, 500,000 childcare loss. Do you think that deporting 1.4 million construction workers will have a negative or positive effect on building new houses? I mean, just stop. Put away your little MAGA hat and think for a second. Does reducing the construction workforce really make sense if you want to solve the housing crisis? All right. So then tariffs. You've got the mass deportations issue, and which is going to lower wages, and it's going to cost jobs. Then on top of that, you've got the tariffs. All right. The tariffs, the average rate now is 18%, up from 2.4%. The average rate was 2.4%. Now it's 18%. That means basically we have across the board increased on average the price of all imported stuff 16%. And you say, well, just buy American. Okay, let's say you sell American beer, right? And then the price of domestic beer or of imported beer goes up 30, 40%. And you can sell your beer by 25% more and still be way cheaper than the domestic beer. Do you think Anheuser-Busch is going to go, no, we're just going to stay at the same price for the good of the American people? Is that what you've learned from corporate America so far, that they're interested in something other than how much money they're making? Please pay attention. So it's not just the increasing cost on imports. It's the increased cost on domestic goods that's going to correlate with it. History shows tariffs don't just increase the cost on imports. You've got basically you're going to add $1,200 to $2,400 per household for annual cost, and that correlates with how much money you have and how much money you spend. And so the poorer you are, see, like if you make $25,000 a year, it costs you $1,200. If you make $100,000 a year, it costs you $2,400. So it might cost you twice as much if you make $100,000, but it costs you twice as much, twice as high of a percentage of your income if you make $25,000. Do you follow me? This is a regressive tax. It hurts poor people more than wealthy people. And so then when you double that up with the immigration issues, you're creating more poor people and you're making it harder for them to even pay for their food. Negative 1 point. So GDP growth is going to get worse. There's some funny stuff going on with GDP. Like they're saying right now it's 4.2%, but that's based on some fuzzy logic where people are buying things ahead of the tariffs to be, you know, they're buying things right now so that when the tariffs kick in, they can sell them at a higher price. So they're buying low and selling high. And then that can sound is considered investment income. So it's making the GDP artificially inflate. But next quarter, when they start selling that stuff, it's going to counteract. So this is like, remember in January or in the first quarter and GDP went down? It was like negative. And then in the fourth quarter, it went up of 2024. In 2024, the fourth quarter, it went way up because of that tariff prep. And then the first quarter, it went down. Okay. And inflation is actually, it's, I think this is 1 to 1.5% has been added just because of tariffs, which I think that's probably a conservative number. Then you've got the healthcare and austerity cuts. Again, who do you think gets affected more by the ACA and austerity cuts? The cuts to Medicaid and the cuts to ACA, who gets affected more? If you are within 400% of the, or if you're over 400% of the poverty level, it doesn't affect you at all. Or if you have, an employer-based income, if you have employer-based insurance, it will affect you. It'll just affect you less directly than you're anticipating, because the insurance prices are still going to go up, but the insurance prices are going to be paid by your employer, which means your employer is not going to have the same amount of money to give you your pay raise, to give you your PTO, to give you your holiday bonus. So you're going to feel the impact of that. It's just not going to be directly in your insurance. So then the budget cuts, HUD, negative 44%. You think that's going to help the housing crisis? Health and Human Services, negative 26%, especially with, Screech running things and, like celebrating the outgrowth of the outbreaks of measles everywhere. You think we're going to, you got your kid that you didn't give the measles vaccine to because Screech told you not to, and you don't have any health insurance, because Congress took it away. Then your kid gets measles. You sure you want that? Is that the America you want? 1.7 trillion in mandatory spending cuts. Oh, but they gave $50 billion to the rural hospitals, which is like a fraction of what they're losing. So when the hospital shuts down and your kid has measles and you've had to take a lower paying job and all the prices go up, remember who you voted for and why. But at least we're spending $170 billion for immigration enforcement so that we could actually cause the problem. We're actually spending money to cause a recession. Do you understand that? All of this is deliberate. None of this had to happen. But we are driving 95 miles an hour into a brick wall and we're blaming the brown people. So the combined economic impact, the first GDP decrease since 2022. This is Claude came up with this. I think that one I think that there's other reasons for that, but I definitely think we're in for some real hits to the GDP. Consumer confidence is down 64%, which is the lowest since November 2023, and that's without real honest numbers from October. And people still know, like he's trying to tell people that prices are down. People know. Unlike Trump, poor people go to grocery stores. The S&P is down 7.3%. And policy uncertainty is 234, which the higher that is, the worse. It's the highest it's been since, guess what? The pandemic. These 5 policy shocks multiply each other's damage. So it's not just that they go, like we can't just look at it independently. This is going to destroy families. When you look at everything together, we're in for a disaster. I'm not trying to be caustic here or anything like that. This is valid. Okay, so let's go and we got James saying do real research, not true. Okay, so nothing of substance from James, just denial and screaming. Wait until you, Kitty, wait until you see the economic impact of the latest restructuring of the DOE. Yeah, rest in peace. Who needs education anyway? Stats are made up. Yes, stats are made up. Great response, James. Do you like yeah, whatever. So we're in for a lot of trouble. And I hope people like James will understand someday that there's a reason for that. And it's because they voted for this clown without understanding the basic principles of economics. You don't deport 10 million people and jack up tariffs to 18% worldwide. And you don't do that while slashing the budget and cutting taxes and shifting the burden towards the poorest people. You like everything. If you wanted to damage the economy as much as possible while staying in the legal constraints of the Constitution, or at least as much as you're stretch them out as much as possible, I would follow the Trump playbook exactly what he's doing. What he is doing is sabotaging the American economy. And I don't know if he may be too stupid to know that's what he's doing, but there are people that are designing it that are 100% know what they're doing. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, James. And I'm glad to hear you're against pedophilia, because I'm sure that you will call out Donald Trump for being one. Okay. That's it for today. Have a great weekend.